La, da, da. Testing.
I like football better than basketball. I think we're going to be in the same spot we were this year. Hey, Dennis.
How we doing?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, good morning.
Every game, I still every game, there's at least two that are it's yellow, but it's different. Yeah. That's right where you sit. I sit there, and that yellow step is right there. And I get in and want to see for your game.
Come on. Testing 1, 2. Am I on or not? Can you hear me?
How are you? We're good.
Hey.
Good morning, good morning. Don't think I'm on. Good morning, good morning. Am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
You're on. Okay, give me a little volume. All right, there's an old saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive. So I hope the students are ready. The teacher has arrived, and we're going to have to kind of get going here. So when I was doing this lesson, I thought, man, I hope I can get it all done in the 45 minutes allotted me. But as we can tell, we only have 40 minutes. So fasten your seatbelt, put your tray tables up in the upright position, and we're going to try to cover a lot of material. Now, I want you to know something. Tell you right up front, I'm going to make you do some thinking here about some things, and your mind today is just going to go like, wow. And some of you are going to leave here with a headache. You're going to have to think so deeply about some things, but I hope that the class will be helpful to you. We're talking about the miracles is the subject heading of this class for the next several weeks, and we're going to be talking about a miracle, but a different kind of a miracle than probably you are thinking about, or I might think be in this series. So let us get, before I forget, if you are here, please sign this. I forget this all the time. If you're here.
If we're not here, we don't have to sign.
If you're not here, you do not have to sign it, yes. Just put your X and well, that'll be just fine. All right, so we are talking about the miracles of Christ. We talked about the resurrection of Lazarus last Sunday. We're going to still stay on the resurrection theme a little bit today. I want to talk about the resurrected body of Jesus. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and if you have your Bible open there, we're going to be there quite a bit during the class today, but in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 20, it says, "Now Christ has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who are asleep. For since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead. Jesus is the first fruits of those who were raised from the dead." I was privileged to do some one-on-one study with Brother Gus Nichols many years ago. And one lesson that he really taught me in Bible study was he said, look at what the verse says. Look at what the verse says. Let's think about, it says that Christ was the first fruits of those who were raised from the dead. Now, what made Jesus the first fruits? What was different about Jesus' resurrection from the other people that had been resurrected from the dead?
You'll never die.
Never die again. So that's what makes his resurrection the very first person to be raised from the dead that would never die again. We know that Jesus raised that widow's son in Nain, and I hope that son enjoyed going back home to his mother and living out a good life, and then maybe he later attended his mother's funeral. That would have been a unique case, that the mother attended the son's funeral and then the son attended the mother's funeral. That's kind of a different situation. I have my old college buddy, best of friends for 57 years now, and we always say, Steve, I want you to preach my funeral, and I'm supposed to preach his. And we hadn't figured out exactly how we're going to make that work, but that worked for in the village of Nain. Then there's that little 12-year-old girl that Jesus raised from the dead, and she must have led a really interesting life. She would always be thought about as that girl that Jesus raised from the dead, and being only 12 years of age, she may have lived long enough to have read the Gospel of Mark that gave the account of her being raised from the dead, Mark being the earliest of the Gospels to come out. But all of those people went back, they led a normal life. Lazarus, when he came out, said, unbind, let him go. We later find Lazarus, at a feast with Jesus, and he went ahead and led a normal life. But the resurrection of Jesus was different. He was the first fruits to be raised, never to die again. And I want us to get into that and understand how this works. This verse says that in Adam all die. You are going to be just like Adam. You are going to die. I hope that's not breaking news to you, but you're going to die at some point. But then it says, so also in Christ you'll be made alive. You're going to then have a new life through Christ. So that's the good news. Bad news, you're going to die. Good news, you're going to live. Okay? Through Christ and through his resurrection. So we want to look at that a little bit and kind of put these things together here. What I want us to do here as sort of an introduction is to kind of do a post-mortem of Jesus' death and resurrection. That is to kind of look at Jesus after he came out of the tomb, because there's some interesting things there that I'm just going to try to get you to understand about Jesus' post-mortem, how he lived after he died. So, my wife's trying to tell me something. I need to. Yeah, it's on. They tell me it's on back there. Hey, give me a little more volume back there if you're back there. There's some people in the back row can't hear me, so mainly my wife. Okay. Of course, we worked with the deaf for years, and so she's used to signing to me while I'm preaching, telling me different things I need to do, so kind of used to that. We want to look then at what I think are kind of some original thoughts of mine. Now, original, of course, means that we forgot where we got it, but what we're going to do is do some things that I've come to kind of gleam in my study of this subject. This is not really something that I've read about somewhere else. Other people may have made the same kind of conclusions that I'm making this morning. I don't know. I have to tell you, I don't do a lot of reading. I do a lot of study and research, but as far as reading religious books, I don't do that. My good friend Steve, he reads a lot of books. He'll say, Dennis, have you read this and that? And I always remind him, Steve, I don't read books, I write them. So somebody has to do the writing. So that's what I do. So I don't know if other preachers have come to this conclusion or looked at these things that I'm going to share with you today, but nonetheless, we're going to do it. I may be a little off base, you may think, but I just take it for what it is. But Jesus, after his resurrection, as we know, walked around on this earth for some 40 days before he ascended. But we want to look at what was different. What was different about him after he came out of the tomb, because he's the first fruits. He's our example of what a resurrected body will be like. It will give us some real life hints and understanding about our own resurrection. All right, first we know that the story of John, of Thomas. Remember that Thomas wanted to see the nail prints and the place on his side where he was pierced. Thomas was not present during that first Sunday when Jesus appeared to the assembled group of apostles. Some of them were missing, Thomas being one of them. And Thomas, remember, said, I won't believe that until I put my hand in the nail prints in his hands and thrust my hand into his side. So this was clearly a physical body that came out of the tomb that even had the marks of crucifixion. Now, the way my mind thinks here too is about Thomas is that how did Thomas know that Jesus had nail prints? How did he know he was nailed to the cross? And how did he know that a soldier pierced Jesus in the side? There's only two ways that he would have known. Number one, that maybe the apostles had told him that. And the other way would have been what? He was there. That's kind of what I think. We only are told that John was there, but it's hard for me to imagine that maybe an apostle or two did not make an appearance, be there. How could you not? Now we know Peter had denied the Lord. He went out into the night weeping. Peter maybe had not made it, but it is at least a good assumption that Thomas came back and witnessed the crucifixion of Jesus, saw him, and saw what that soldier thrust him in the side with that spear. So he said, look, I'm not going to believe. I know what happened to the Lord on the cross, and I'm not going to believe that he's alive until I'm able to put my hands in those nail prints, which makes Thomas a fairly logical thinking. I also believe that Saul of Tarsus was there, and I can kind of back that up with some scriptures too. So there were the scene of Jesus being crucified is a really important in the lives of several biblical characters. Of course, John we know was there and standing by Jesus' mother.
Dennis, are you going to touch on those with Saul of Tarsus in the lesson?
I will not, but
what
see
scriptures are you thinking about?
me, huh?
Oh, okay, I'll see that.
See me afterwards. I can show you some passages. Yes. I mean, when Jesus appeared to him on the road to Damascus, how would Paul know that it was Jesus? I mean, there's several things that my crazy mind reads between the line a lot here and there.
So do you think that Jesus lived a whole lot here?
Yes, and we're going to get into that here. Okay, first of all, we're going to go here to John chapter 20. John chapter 20, Gospel of John chapter 20, and we're going to see here kind of what happened. Okay, on that Resurrection Sunday, the ladies go to the tomb Jesus not there. They go back to tell the disciples, but Mary Magdalene stays behind. She stays at the tomb, and she is looking. She's in the tomb looking. And the angels are, of course, there. She saw two angels. This is chapter 20, verse 12. Saw two angels in white garments sitting there, where the body of Jesus had been lying. And they said to her, "Woman, who are you weeping? Why are you weeping?" She said to them, "Because they have taken away the Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." Now notice this. When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but did not know that it was Jesus. Now that kind of puzzles me a little bit. Now, of course, he could have, had his hoodie on, and maybe disguised himself a little bit or kept that, but she didn't recognize him when she saw him. Not only that, then Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Who are you seeking?" And supposing him to be the gardener. So she doesn't recognize his form, nor does she recognize what? His voice. Interesting, isn't it? "Sir, where have you laid him?" Jesus said to her then, "Mary." And she turned and said to him in Hebrew, Rabboni, which means teacher. And Jesus said to her, "Stop clinging to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brethren and say to them, I ascend to my Father and your Father, and my God and your God." And Mary Magdalene came and announced to the disciples, telling them what she had heard. So she doesn't recognize his form initially, and then doesn't recognize his voice initially until he calls her by name. Now, that can be kind of explained away, but it seems very apparent that his physical form is somewhat different, that she would be looking for Jesus, and she turns around and there he is, and she doesn't recognize him. There's something to me in my mind that just doesn't want to click. And then when she does, she wants to come and embrace him, and he says, "No, I've not yet ascended to my Father." Now I think that expression means that Jesus, when he came out of the tomb, his form was ready, in that ready mode now to ascend to God. All right, his form, his body was now ready. Don't hug me now. I'm getting ready to ascend now. I'm in that mode where I can now ascend to my Father. So there's something then different here immediately when she first sees him. Now, later then, the apostles are assembled, and they are wondering what's going on. Now, chapter 20 again, we're still there, verse 19. "So when it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, and when the doors were shut," that makes it appear that this is an enclosed room. "Doors were shut where the disciples were for fear of the Jews." They didn't know they've killed one of us. Maybe they're going to try to kill more of us. We don't know. "Jesus came and stood in their midst and said, 'Peace be with you.'" So now they're in an enclosed, secure room, and all of a sudden Jesus just appears. How does that happen? Normal people don't just pop up in an enclosed room. That's not normal. The body of Jesus that came out, it was in a form, it was not initially recognized by Mary. It was in a form to ascend back into the heavens, and now this form is able to just pop in. He didn't, knock on the door and then walk in the room. He just appeared there, and he speaks to them. And that's when this thing happened with Thomas. So now, verse 26, after 8 days, his disciples were again inside, and Thomas with them on that occasion, and the doors having been shut, so it's making very clear to us that this is a secure room. He came and stood in their midst and said again, peace be with you. So this is not normal. Bodies don't just, we're not able to just pass through walls, but somehow this form, whatever Jesus was in, was able to just appear and disappear almost at will. So there's something definitely different about Jesus' body when he came out of the tomb. It was his body. It was him. I can say it was Jesus, but he was different. He was the same. He had the nail prints in his hands, but he was also very different in his form. Now he's able to just to appear and to disappear.
You
Now,
think that's the same, maybe maybe not the same, but it's a symbol at least of what it's going to be like when we are called. When we are called, if we come out,
Okay.
our bodies will not be recognized as though we are now.
all right.
There's a sense of purity that was attached, for lack of a better word, to him when he came out, that nothing could impede that because it would not be allowed into heaven.
Yeah.
So those same things are what would give us an idea of what it would be like for us at some point, hopefully.
See, now he is jumping ahead a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, no, because that's the message that we need to be getting here about our own resurrection. You see, the miracle let's look here at this thing. It just doesn't stop. You remember he ran that Sunday afternoon before these appearances to the apostles. He meets these two men on the road to Emmaus, a little village outside of Jerusalem. And they are evidently very close disciples of Jesus. And they are, when Jesus joins them, they don't recognize him. It says then, now this story is told in Mark 16, that he appeared in a different form. That's what the text says. He appeared in a different form. Well, we know there's something different. So Mary didn't recognize him. So these two men who are very close to Jesus, because they tell him, do you know what's going on in town? He said, no, what are you talking about? And they said, oh my goodness, everybody knows what's going on in town. Everybody knows about Jesus of Nazareth. And so they begin to tell Jesus about Jesus. Bishop Overton has a book and a sermon he calls When Christ Was Preached to Christ. Well, here these men from Emmaus are preaching Christ to Christ. They begin telling about who he was and what all that he did. And so they finally sit down at a meal. They invite him to sit, and they're eating. And it says then in Luke 24:30, their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. So he gave them the ability, or revealed himself, and their eyes were opened that, oh dear, we've been telling Jesus, talking about Jesus to Jesus. And then he vanishes from their sight. Normal people don't just vanish from our dinner table. That's not something that normally happens. And here's another thing that's interesting, I found interesting, that Jesus no longer fellowships or travels with the apostles. Remember, Jesus had told them through Mary to meet me in Galilee. He didn't walk with them again anymore. Always, he walked with his disciples when they went from Jerusalem to Galilee and back and forth. He's not there with them anymore. He's just going to meet them there. I guess he's just going to kind of float over on a cloud, or, hitch a ride with some of the angels, but he's just going to meet them there. So then there's that story of where Peter says, I go fishing. So he and 5 others is the account. Thomas is with them too. I don't know where the other apostles were, but 5 others are in a boat fishing. Now they didn't fish very far from the shore. Remember, Jesus had told them way back when to cast out deep for a great catch, because fishermen don't fish from the shore. It always surprises me. I'm not a big fisherman, but it always surprises me how that fishermen go out and buy a $10,000 boat and fish just 20 yards off of the shore. I mean, what's the reason for the boat? But that's how, you catch more fish in the shallow water, so that's what they're doing. So they're not that far out, and Jesus walks up on the shore and begins talking to them. They're not far away. Hey, have you caught anything? No. Well, cast your net on the other side. And so they do. Now, they don't recognize this guy. How's that possible? What's going on? So they cast their net on the other side, and of course they have this huge catch of fish. And Peter just jumps out of the boat and runs to the shore and falls down before, John says, it's the Lord. It's the Lord. So Peter jumps out and he runs up, and there's Jesus. And so the other men come to shore and they drag this net to shore. There's 157 fish that are caught. But Jesus already has a fire built and is already cooking fish, and it has cooked fish and bread. I don't know how Jesus did that. Did he just speak and it came? He could multiply fish and stuff. Jesus, had that power, but the meal was already there, and he's there, and he's talking to them, and they don't recognize him for a while. And then the text says that while they're eating with him, they're looking at him because they don't know exactly who he is. I mean, when you do this post-mortem about Jesus' appearances like this, it's rather difficult to conceive. Now, that's the end of my introduction, okay? So I've got about 15 minutes now to cover the rest of this. All right, so we're going to turn over to 1 Corinthians 15, back to 1 Corinthians 15 where we were. Let's first look at verse 50 and 51 of 1 Corinthians 15. By the way, this is a great chapter for you to read. It tells us so much about resurrection, the resurrection. Verse 50, Paul says, "Now I say this, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. Behold, I tell you a mystery, we will not all sleep, but we will all be changed in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye," as the text goes on. So, Jesus, the first fruits, when he came out of the tomb, he had been changed into some other form. There was something very different about him. So now we find out that we too are going to be changed. And I suggest to you that Jesus is the example somewhat of that change. That Jesus was in a different form, and that form was not a purely physical form. Now, I think there are a couple of things different about Jesus' situation, ideally. So when Jesus came out of that tomb, if he was changed totally, where was his body? Well, no, his body was still there, had the marks in it. That's going to be a little different for us, though. So let's look then at what the text tells us now about what happens here. Now, chapter 15, verse 35. Now, the first part of chapter 15 are all about Jesus' resurrection, about all the witnesses, everybody that saw him, the importance of the resurrection. But let's look here. We want to see here about what's going to happen to us. And here is the miracle, by the way. The miracle we're talking about this morning is the miracle where we see all these miracles that Jesus does for everybody. This is a miracle that Jesus is going to do to you. Okay? Let's read about that miracle. Verse 35, but someone will say, how are the dead raised, and with what kind of body do they come? You fool, that which you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And that which you sow, you do not sow the body which it is to be, but a bare grain perhaps of wheat or of something else. But God gives it a body just as he wished, and to each of the seeds a body of its own. All right, so you're going to be raised, but what kind of body are you going to come out with? Well, that's a great question. And the first answer is that, hey, it's not going to be the body that you have now. Hallelujah. You know? That's what most of us are saying. Yeah, good. I don't want to come out like I went in. No. I want to be changed. And so he then used this great example. This is the greatest example you have about resurrection. You take a seed of corn, and you can lay that seed up on the table, and you can look at it for 100 years, and it's just going to be a seed of corn. It is not going to come to life until it is buried. And once you bury it in the soil, that seed comes to life and it sprouts. But what comes out of the ground is not another seed of corn, is it? It's a stalk of corn. It comes out totally different. So here's this stalk 5 feet tall that has come out of that. Now you can dig down into the ground and you won't find that seed, will you? No. That seed has died and gone away. So your body is going to return to the dust from which it came. But what sprouts is going to be a totally new body, a totally different body that's going to sprout. Totally different. When we are resurrected, it's not going to be that physical, earthly body. When my first full-time preaching job I took at Pine Grove Church of Christ in Fulton, Mississippi, had a little gal with long brown hair. That was a deacon's daughter there, and she sits right back there now. But they didn't even have a church office, so I made an office in one of the classrooms in the back of the building that had a beautiful window overlooking. Pine Grove has a beautiful cemetery. And I'm always thinking, I'm looking at that every day, and I'm thinking, you know, that's where I want to be buried. I'm thinking when I come out of that grave on Resurrection Day, and I come out of the tomb, this is a beautiful place to come out of my grave. And I'm still thinking this is going to be a physical, bodily resurrection. Going to come out of that grave. It's going to be a wonderful place to be raised. No. I was a young preacher, thought I had all the answers, John. No, that body's going to die. That body's got to die. So if that does, then with what kind of material then is the new body going to come out? Well, let's read on here. All flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one flesh of men, and another flesh of beasts, and another flesh of birds, and another flesh of fish. Just think about that. God has already demonstrated that he can create a whole lot of different kinds of bodies out of a lot of different kinds of, quote, flesh, of material. Us men, we have one type of flesh, but then, you know, there's another one of beast. We like our beef, don't we? We like our fish, and we like our birds. We eat a lot of chicken. And all of those flesh, all of that meat is different, isn't it? It has a different taste, a different quality to it, and we enjoy that difference. So just remember, God is able to create a lot of different kinds of material in which He has created living flesh here on this earth. Verse 40, there's also heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heaven is one and the glory of the earth earthly is another. There's one glory of the sun, another glory of the moon, another glory of the stars, and one star differs from the next in glory. Not only is He able to create different flesh, but different material, different stuff that He's made this world out of. Our world is very different from the moon. You know, we've gone up there to the moon. I don't know if they've tried to plant a kernel of corn in that soil or not, but it's not going to grow. It's a different material than this earth. In this earth, we have a firmament, and we have a green planet. We look around at Mars, and it just looks desolate. Well, God has created a lot of different kinds of stuff that He made things out of in this world. So also is then the resurrection of the dead. It is sown a perishable body, returned to the dust from which it came, but it is raised an imperishable body. So this body is going to die, but the body you're going to be given is going to be imperishable. It's never going to perish. It's going to be an eternal body. It is sown in discord, so when you die, you're going to be buried or cremated or whatever happens. You're sown in dishonor, but it is raised in glory. It's sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body. So the word natural means carnal or fleshly. So we bury this carnal, fleshly remains of our loved one. It is sown a natural body, but it is raised a spiritual body. So you're going to be raised, and that body that you're going to have is going to be a spiritual, that is made up of a spiritual flesh instead of a natural carnal flesh. So that's going to be the new body that you are going to have and are going to be enjoying. So that is the type of body then that we are going to come out of this world with. So come resurrection then, we will all be raised and given that new spiritual form, that new spiritual body that our souls will be living in, and that body will live forever and ever and ever. It'll be imperishable, be eternal. Now that can be good and bad. That's a good thing if you're living a good Christian life, but if you're not, that could be a bad thing, isn't it? Because I think even the wicked then are going to be raised too. Revelation says, you know, that come Judgment Day, death and Hades will be given up, and those written in the Lamb Book of Life will go on, and the others will be going into eternal torment. Yes.
So, sometimes in Scripture, when heaven is described, the beings in Scripture are sort of weird looking. Do you think we'll be weird looking like that? I'm just saying, because we'll be able to see things differently.
You know, I always go back to Jesus' form when He came out. He was different, but He was still, there were things about Him, if you tried, you could recognize who He was, and He would reveal Himself to us. It may be in heaven that we will know each other, but we may have to do a little searching a little bit, because that spiritual form may throw us off a little bit, but we may be introducing one another, and oh yes, that's who you are. I see that.
But it was a human-like form.
So human-like form,
yes.
yes.
They thought he was somebody on the road.
Yeah.
So it was something that wasn't too outlandish. You know, he didn't have 4 ears. Or anything.
In Luke's,
Right.
To that point, in Luke's account, he says, "See my hands, my feet. That is, it is I myself. Touch me and see, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have."
There you go.
And then he asks for something to eat.
Yeah, give me something to eat. So what will we be eating in heaven? It'll be angel food cake. A lot of angel food cake, I think. Maybe a lot of manna. I don't know, but this is what I gained from all this, and I know we can talk about this forever, but time is up, and thank you. I've enjoyed doing these 2 lessons with you, but I think when it says that we are created in God's image, I kind of see God as kind of looking like us, sort of, and that when we are resurrected, that we'll be kind of looking like Him, that we'll, it talks about God, in human form, His eyes, His hands, things like that. And I think we will. I think God made us in His image, so I think in heaven you're going to kind of have hands and feet and stuff, but it's going to be made out of a spiritual material that will never die, and that's the miracle that will be done to us.
Also glorious and powerful.
Glorious, yes, a powerful, glorious, yes. That mean we fly? We can fly like the angels, maybe? I don't know. That would be cool, wouldn't it? It'd be very cool, or that we could, be neat. But
All angels fly.
well, we know they have wings, and so those wings must be good for something. And Revelation 4, those 4 cherubim are circling above. So I guess they're flying in that way. So yeah, I think angels have wings and they fly, especially. And maybe we'll earn our wings. I don't know, but thank you very much. Appreciate it. We could talk about this a lot more, but thank you